And so I would like to introduce Lindsay Walsh. She wears many hats at Tidestone, and many of you have probably worked with her or spoken with her in the past. And she's just going to help us out with some intro.
Hi everyone, welcome to our monthly webinar. As you know, this is Tidestone Solutions, and we are a Microsoft partner, and we have been helping our clients improve their business process for more than 20 years. We specialize in Dynamics GP and helping our customers to find new productivity tools and solutions that help their business process increase efficiency and streamline their processes. We really have a very strong focus on our existing customers. We are not really a sales organization. We like to have a long-term relationship with our clients, and that means working with them as a partner and not just a software vendor. We work mostly with local businesses. We are here in Portland, Maine. Most of our clients are in New England, but we do have clients around the country. And we help all of our clients selecting software, whether it's something that they need to work on a specific business process that will integrate with their existing ERP and accounting software, whether they're moving to Dynamics GP, we need to help them with data conversion and integrating other applications. We do training and support for new clients and for new employees at our clients' organizations. And you can see on the screen here a number of other things that we do: custom reporting, task automation. We do development and customization. We have a very highly skilled technical team. We haven't seen a problem yet that we put before them that they can't solve with some SQL magic. And again, we really like to help our clients refine their business process because that's the key to helping them grow. And with that, I'd like to hand this over to Alicia. She is our practice manager and our application solutions specialist, and she will be sharing tips and tricks about SmartList, which is one of our favorite features in Dynamics GP. So enjoy, and again, if you have any questions, send them through the chat, and if you have any questions after the webinar, feel free to follow up directly with me or with Alicia afterwards by email.
Great, thank you, Lindsay. And it looks like we've had a few more people join us, so this is good. We have a nice crowd for today. And I think most of you have been using GP for quite some time, and I'm hopeful that you've had a chance to check out the SmartList query tool in GP, and I think some of you even have the add-on tool, the SmartList Builder tool. And so for today, we are going to look at a few things about SmartList that maybe you know already, or maybe it's a nice tip or trick that you can take home with you today. So before you is the agenda, and I will be going through some overview of SmartList, how to create a SmartList, how to copy an existing SmartList so that you're not starting from scratch, and how to remove a SmartList. The next is favorites. Favorites are those queries that you name. There are several favorites that come with Dynamics GP SmartLists that are there for you to use day to day. We'll talk about how to remove those and how to modify those. We'll look at how to add and remove columns, how to rename them, and how to sort columns of information in your SmartList. We'll look at the search filter and how you can filter the records by column and different options that you have in that search area. One of the items that a lot of users aren't aware of is the maximum records, and sometimes if you don't change that maximum records, you could be missing out on additional data. There's a SmartList Options setting that you can go to and make some changes to your SmartList to make it a little more user-defined. And then we'll look at how to add these SmartLists to your My Reports section in GP. So if you're using that, you can add SmartLists very easily to that area. And so we have a good agenda today, and again, I'll be going through all of these changes. I'll be in our GP 2010 environment. So if you are using SmartList now and you're in GP, things may look a little different. If you're in 2010, it'll look very familiar. 2010, you might notice some changes, and if you're using 2013, the SmartList look the same, the background's a little bit different. So with that, I will just launch my dev machine and we'll get started. Okay, so here you can see I'm in GP 2010, and I'm going to go up to my little shortcut and I'm going to launch SmartList. And SmartList is a very powerful query tool within GP that is fully integrated with the Office products, with Excel and with Word. With just the click of a button you can export, and we'll look at that as well. So when you open up your SmartList, the first thing you'll see is a list of folders. And these folders have organized your SmartList by the series or module in GP. So if you typically focus on the general ledger side, you may want to expand the financial folder to see what types of queries are available to you. Or maybe you do purchasing or payables. You'd open up the folder by clicking on the box to the left, and you'll see all the different query categories. Now, to look in one of these categories, you would again expand the selection, and you would see any queries that have been created. You can see here we have several that came from GP with the asterisks. And then if you look here, this is the template, as I like to refer to it as. This is the out-of-the-box query where you can make changes to it and add columns and remove columns and sort differently, and you can save your queries. So if I wanted to just look at a list of vendors, I would go down to purchasing. I would expand on the vendors list, and you can see I have several that Dynamics GP that Microsoft already created for me. So I have one here that says vendor balance. So if I click on this query, it automatically goes out and lists all of my vendors and what their current balance is. And so this is a nice out-of-the-box SmartList. If I wanted to keep this SmartList intact and create another similar SmartList, I could either start from scratch back here at the what I refer to as the template, which has a lot of different information that I'm really not interested in, or I could start with the vendor balance query and save it as something else, so I'm not starting from scratch. And so the way that you go into SmartList to save as, you would come up to this Favorites button, and you can see the original name of the SmartList is here. And again, that asterisk says, I came with GP, it's out of the box. And I'm just going to put it here and call it Webinar. If I click on this Add, I'm going to select Add Favorite, and that's how it creates another version. So if you look down here in the list, you can see not only do I have my vendor balance SmartList, but I have a new vendor balance that says Webinar. So I can make changes to this without impacting the original SmartList. So on this vendor list, I'd like to add their telephone number. So I'm going to go up under the Columns button, and when I click on this, these are the columns that already exist. So I'm going to add a column, and I'm going to go down here and find phone. So if I say OK, I've now added the phone number to this list. Now it's important to go back and save that change if you want to have this as a query with the phone number when you launch it next time. So the next step is actually to go to the Favorites button and click Modify. Modify is really the trigger to save those changes. So that's a nice way to copy an existing SmartList and then continue with any of the changes that you are planning to do. If I decided that I did not want this SmartList, I could go up under Favorites and simply click Remove. And that SmartList is gone. Now when I'm in the SmartList over here, if I select an item, one of the items in the query, one of the records, you'll notice that a little red circle comes up, and what that will do is we'll stop exploring. Now my vendor list isn't very long. I have 108 vendors. It completed within the 1,000 record limit that is set on this, and we'll talk more on that later. But if I had selected something like GL account transactions and I had no filters, then it would try to recover several records, hundreds of records actually, and by default it would stop at 1,000, but perhaps I just want to stop it. I can stop that exploring process. To the right of that is my Go To button, and if I click on this, you can see I have several options to choose from. The first item is View. So if I select that, it brings me to Vendor Maintenance. So since that's the first option, I know that when I double click on a record, that's the view I'm going to go to. If I wanted to look at anything else, I can go to the Go To and go to an inquiry window.
Sure, yep.
Bob, I think I hear you speaking. Is it you speaking? I hear background noise. I think I'm going to mute everyone for now just so we don't have any background noise. Okay. So on the Go To, I have several different options to look at, and I can look at anything about that record that I've highlighted. So perhaps I want to see what the fiscal year totals are for this vendor. I can go there very easily. I can also export this to Excel or Word with just a click of a button. And so you've all experienced the attempt at trying to export reports in GP to Excel. Some of them you can print to file and they print okay. A lot of them don't because it doesn't like all of the page headers. SmartList is a great tool because it just exports the data into a formatted spreadsheet. So you very easily have exported all of that vendor data and you can manipulate it in Excel any way you want. You can also export to a Word table if that's something that you prefer over an Excel spreadsheet. Okay, so if I have a SmartList that I want to modify that's already here, again, I would just go up, make the change, and click Modify. What I'd like to show you now is that you can add this not only as a favorite, but as a reminder. So if I select Favorite and Reminder, I have to rename it because there's already one that exists. I want to add it as a reminder. And if I say that I want to see when vendor totals are greater than, let's say, $1,000, I want to have a reminder. Now when I look at my home page, I will have a reminder that says your vendor totals are more than 1,000. So if I just minimize this and I go back to my home page and I refresh, I can see now, Vendor Balance Webinar, I have a reminder here about my payables, and it will open up that smart list that I've created. Thought I lost you all for a minute there. Okay, so back to the smart list. I'd like to go back and show you some of the things that you can do with the smart list. So right now I'm creating a smart list on GL accounts. I currently have these columns. I can add any column that is within this list here. So I can scroll through and find different information. Maybe I want to look at what's user-defined. Maybe I'm trying to find a certain type of column. I can search by clicking on type, and it will bring me a list that's sorted by type. So maybe I'm looking for a date, maybe not in accounts, but maybe in purchasing transactions or something of the sort. So I can add as many columns as I'd like here, and I can search and sort by field name or by type. One thing you may not be aware of is that on this SmartList, you can rename some of these display names. So perhaps there's a field that you use internally, and your business process is such that you do not use the term that GP uses. You can come in here and rename any of these areas. So if I just type in here, when I say OK, the user-defined column now doesn't list as user-defined. It lists as webinar. So you can see I've renamed that column. So I guess I didn't rename user-defined. I renamed the node column. I apologize for the confusion. So I have renamed that, and so in my reports it will show up appropriately. Within the query, I'm going to expand this to full screen so you can see it a little better. I can sort. You can see there's a little arrow here. I can sort any of these columns just by clicking on that header. So it groups all of the transactions or the master records based on that sort criteria. So with that, let's go over to the search button. So if I go over to search, I have 4 different criteria that I can use to search in that SmartList. So on the columns, I'm going to select what type of account it is. So maybe I want all my balance sheet accounts. And I want to know if account entry is allowed. And then I can have as many filters as I'd like. One thing you may not have noticed in this window is these are the columns that I've added to my query to show to the right over here. I can also sort by any of the columns that are available in this query that maybe I don't have to show over here, but I want to filter on them. And maybe I want to create the list by typical balance is equal to debit on the balance sheet. And so that will create a filter that is not obvious over here in the spreadsheet. So if I say OK, it's going to limit my records based on that search criteria. So it's all balance sheet, and it's all balance sheet items that have a debit natural balance. I'm going to jump up here to account transactions for a minute. And you'll see what I mean by how quickly this reaches that $1,000 record maximum. If I go into the search button, you can see that area is down here. It says that we'll only return 1,000 records until you change this. Now I can change this, but I'm going to need to change that every single time I create this smart list. So if I'm constantly creating smart lists and I want to exceed that 1,000 records, there is a place to change that. And I'll show you that in a minute. So this is a smart list where you may want to say stop. I didn't put in enough filters. I really don't want to look at 5,000 records. So you can use that stop. So if we go back into search either by clicking on the search button or by double-clicking on the query, you can see my maximum records. And over here is another area that you may not be aware of, search type. You can use the match all, so it has to fit all this criteria, or match one or more. So you have an option to say this and or this. Okay. All right. So what I'd like to do now is to go up and show you where those SmartList options are so that you can further customize your SmartList experience. One thing I will note is that you can print these SmartLists from here. It's not always as nice a printout as if you would export it to Excel or Word. So if I were to print this to screen, you can see how it has 2 rows for every record. It's going to make your report very long. You could just export it to Excel, format it, or Word, format it, and you'll be able to print that however you'd like. One thing I do want to point out before we go to the SmartList options is, for some reason, all of these reports, these queries that come out from financial, this has been updated that debit is before credit. But if you notice, the template is alphabetical, credit and then debit. You could really get very mixed up if you didn't switch around your debits and credits. So there's also a place where you can make that template default to be debit and credit rather than going in to each query and changing it to debit then credit. So let's go up to SmartList options. I'm just going to minimize the SmartList. And I'm going to go to SmartList options by clicking on the Microsoft Dynamics GP menu drop down. Go to Tools, Setup, System, and SmartList options. Now you may not have access to do this, so you may have to ask someone else to do this. And this is a global setting. So if one person changes it, everyone's SmartList will benefit. So in here you can see these are the defaults, and the categories are all of those different queries that we were looking at within the folders. So let's say I know my chart of accounts is higher than 1,000. I can change this default to be 5,000 so that anytime I have a query, it will default to 5,000. So if I go ahead and look at that now under under accounts, you'll see that down below here, it changed that maximum to 5,000. I don't have to go in and change that every time now because I've changed the default. And let's go back into SmartList options. There are a few other things that you can change in here. You can change what your default go-to is. So if you change your default go-to, that means when you double-click on that record within the query, it will automatically go to whatever you select in this list. So perhaps for accounts, you don't want to go to View, you want to go to Summary Inquiry or Detail Inquiry. You can select Detail Inquiry, and so if I go to Accounts, and I refresh my list. And now when I double click, it's bringing me to an inquiry screen. And it also updated the go-to up here. So you can see inquiry is the top line. My mouse isn't cooperating. Here we go. So you can go by any category, change your default go-to, increase your maximum records or decrease. And down below here you can determine what are the default columns that come over. When I look at accounts, these are the default columns, and below the unchecked boxes are those columns that I can add to the query each time. So I could mark them all. Perhaps those are all helpful to me. Maybe not in your accounts query, but maybe a purchasing or an inventory smart list. You can add any of those as a default. So when you're building a new query, those will automatically default into your query. I can also reorganize. So if I go to Account Transactions, you can see that credit is first and then debit. I don't like that. My accounting background tells me that's so wrong. So I'm going to hit credit amount, and I'm going to organize it so that it always comes over as debit first and then credit. Now I don't have to worry about reorganizing those columns each time I build a SmartList. So if I say OK here, and I go to my account transactions SmartList, and I look at that template, you can see debit is now first and then credit. Okay. Let's look at a few other things about the SmartList. When you create a SmartList and you save a view, you have the option to name it. Then you also have this here, visible to. You can make it visible to everyone in the system, every company, or you can change it to company or a user class or just maybe your user ID. And so if I say user ID, that means I'm the only one that will be able to see this SmartList. It's not going to add to anyone else's list of SmartList. I'm just going to be the one using this. The nice thing about having your own SmartList here is that if I go back now to my home page and I look at my reports, I can see my SmartList is on my reports list. So if I click on the link here, it launches my SmartList for me. That's one way of getting your SmartList onto your My Reports section. There's a couple of other ways. So let's say I'm always in purchasing, and I want to see what SmartLists there are for purchasing. Now purchasing is purchase order processing or payables management. And so it will bring up a list of SmartLists for both of those series. And maybe my cash requirements is one that I want to have on my home page as my report. I simply highlight and mark that report. I come up to this area here and I click Add. And I can rename it if I want, or I can just keep it that way. So if I say OK, this will bring it over to my reports on my home page. And I have to just refresh my, oh, it refreshed it already. So cash requirements, one click, and it will launch that SmartList for me. The final way that you can add SmartList to your My Reports section in GP is if you have access to the administration page, and many of you may not have access to this, and that's okay. But in this window, you have access to all of the SmartLists within GP. So if I go up here to the navigation area, SmartList Favorites, these are all of the SmartLists that are available in GP. So it's not separated out by series. You can see it's sorted by series, but it's not separated out. Everything is here. So you can see human resources, sales, payroll, all of the SmartLists. So you can add a SmartList from here. So if I wanted this, I could add it to my reports just by clicking. And when I go back to my home page, that will also be available. And you can see here it is, web. Okay, let's go back into the actual SmartList. And one of the things that I want to make you aware of, actually let's do it on the sales side. Sales transactions. So if you're looking at sales transactions, let's say we want to look at the documents. I don't want all columns. I want just selected columns. Document type. Okay, so one thing you'll notice is this is a return document, so it's a credit memo. But if you look at this, the document amount is a positive number, and that is standard in GP. Credit memos will show as a positive number. So if you're exporting a smart list that includes returns and invoices. Actually, let me just take that out. And we'll do document date is equal to, I think, if we were to have, well, that date range isn't working. If we were to have both invoices and returns in one smart list, you would not know the difference between them by looking at the dollar amount. So you'd want to make sure that when you export this to Excel, you create all the returns as you reverse the symbol. Now I'm not finding any right here, but when you have a return, may not have returned any in this 1,000. Here's some returns. You'll notice that the returns look just like an invoice when you export them to Excel. And it exports actually pretty quickly for over 600 rows. It's chugging along pretty quickly. You may actually have faster progress because I'm remote. I'm an RDP to a dev machine, and then I have GoToMeeting going. So you may actually see this going much more quickly. So when we export this Excel spreadsheet, you'll see the returns are here as a positive amount, as well as any of the invoices that are down below here. So that in this column, there's really no differentiation, so you need to be aware of that. The other item you want to be aware of is if the document is voided. So there's, in many smart lists, it's status, or you might find that it says voided, yes or no. And it must not be in this one here. Let's see. Void status. And so by the void status, just by looking at these here, you can't tell if it's voided. So you may want to add the criteria that the void status is not equal to normal. So let's see. It's kind of an odd way of putting it. So if I go here, you can see there's voided transactions here, but I have no way of knowing just by the document amount. We don't have that little asterisk in SmartList like we have in the inquiry window. So unless you specifically add it to your SmartList and filter them out, they will be included in your total, so you need to be careful of those. Okay, so let's see. Just going back over my agenda. Let's go back to my agenda for a minute. We did go over creating, copying, and removing SmartList favorites, adding columns, removing them, renaming them, and sorting them. We looked at the search filter, how you can search by the included columns or by all columns that are available, what the different options are to search for, and the maximum records, how you can change that within the search filter. Oh, let's go back. We didn't look at order by. Let's go back. So if we go in this search criteria here, you also have an order by that you can use in the search. So down below here, I have this order by button that perhaps I want to sort more than what I'm capable of doing by just clicking the header. Perhaps I want it to be by document number, then by date. So let's say order by, and I can select here. I'm just going to say document date and document ID. So I have a couple of different sorting criteria. I can do ascending or descending. And any of these criteria here I can add. So if I say OK, it's sorting it by the document date, and then within that it's going further. So it's, let's see, it's not working there, is it? 17th. Let me go back into what I just did. Oh, did I not insert them? So let's see, document date and document ID, and OK, and OK. There we go. Well, it's still. Well, my system is wreaking havoc because it should be sorting by document date first. Perhaps it's because I am in a SmartList that hasn't been saved. Let's go to one that has been saved. Let's try this. So let's say document date and then by document amount. Let's see, so document date is over here. Let's expand this view. Well, my system is not working, but that is how it should work. So let us know if you're having trouble with that order by, because I must have a little bit of an issue here, because this typically will sort by the document date and then the document amount. And so let's just let it continue building, and it's not. Okay. Well, give it a try. If it doesn't work for you, let us know, and I'll look into why that might not be working, and if you have problems, shoot me an email and I'll let you know what I found. Okay, so let's go back to our agenda. We went to the SmartList Options and looked at how you could change the defaults, the default go-tos, the default maximums, default columns, resorting columns, and then we looked at adding to my reports, how easily it was to add those smart lists either by choosing user ID or by going to area pages and selecting SmartList Options and clicking the Add To button. And the other things that we talked about is just to beware of voids and returns and credits in SmartList, because they show as a positive number and can really skew your reporting if you're not taking those into account. And so that is what I have. Does anyone have any questions? I will unmute and you can ask any question. No questions?
Hey, Alicia, I got one.
Whoever that is, could you speak up, please? I'm not hearing you very well.
Alicia, this is Bob.
Oh, hi, Bob.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Is there any way you can, like on the smart listing, there's 4 options there? Is there any way to get any more than 4? So
well, the way that you get more than 4 is by using the add-on, which is SmartList Builder, which is a tool that works in conjunction with SmartList. It allows you to, a lot of the struggles that people will have with SmartList is that their SmartList gives them about 90% of the information they want in one SmartList, and the other 10 is in another SmartList, and then they combine them. So SmartList Builder allows you to take those existing queries and add on to them and link more tables. So unfortunately, with the out-of-the-box SmartList, you just have those 4 search criteria.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? And if you're interested in SmartList Builder, just shoot me an email and I can get you some information on that. Okay, so if there aren't any other questions, we'll just end for today. I just wanted to let you know we do have a few things coming up. Next month on the 30th, we'll be talking about accounts receivable month-end procedures in our webinar. And again, it's a free webinar. Anyone's welcome to join us. In August, the webinar will be on the historical inventory trial balance. And then in September, we'll all be joining back together for the Dynamics GP user group meeting. We took the summer off, and we'll be regrouping again. That's going to be at NAPI Distributors, and it's starts at 9:30 a.m. at NAPI, as 9 didn't work the room wasn't available, so we're going to be starting at 9:30 versus 9 o'clock on that date. So thank you all for attending, and feel free to contact us with any questions. If you think of a question while you're using SmartList, just let us know, and we'll be glad to help. All right. Have a great day, everyone.